Welcome back to the Postscript, the podcast about films where the discourse ended with an ellipsis rather than a period. I'm Chris Hall.
I'm Sebastian.
And this is Mateo.
And on this podcast, we will be reassessing films of recent memory where the discourse was left unsettled. We will try to provide more definitive takes on films that generated a lot of buzz upon release, but their reputations have since become murky, or maybe they've just fallen through the cracks of culture altogether. Movies that make you ask, where are they now? Last week, we discussed Christopher Nolan's Insomnia from 2002, where we decided that the film, frankly, has no business being as forgotten as it is, and both stylistically and in terms of merit, fits pretty comfortably into his filmography. This week, for the first time ever on the pod, we're doing a little double feature action, because to commemorate the release of Ridley Scott's Napoleon, we will be revisiting his two Alien prequels, Prometheus and Alien Covenant. And to serve as our guide through these two films, we are calling it our resident alien expert and Prometheus and Alien Covenant truther and good friend Owen Ward. Owen, thanks for being here.
Hey, happy to be here. Happy to guide you through the space of Ridley Scott's prequel.
Let's go.
Prometheus has landed.
These are ancient civilizations that were separated by centuries, and yet this same pictogram was discovered in every one of them.
They're smiling.
I think they want us to come and find them.
Covenant, do you read me? Covenant, come in. You hear that?
What?
Nothing. No birds. No animals. Nothing.
Prometheus was released in 2012 and is set in the year 2093 and follows a spaceship crew that sets out to discover the origins of humanity on a distant world. Its sequel, Alien Covenant, was released in 2019 and takes place 11 years after Prometheus. And I'll just leave it at that for that one. That one's almost best going into as cold as possible. So Prometheus, it was pretty well received by critics, right? Generally, people were gushing over it, but it was respected, it was well received, and it made $400 million on a $130 million budget. So it was successful enough to more than successful enough to warrant a sequel that Ridley Scott and Damon Lindelof, who was responsible for like the final drafts on that film, were planning on making. And then Alien Covenant came out in 2017, where the critical response was much more lukewarm, and it only made $240 million on a $100 million budget, not including marketing costs. And so that was considered kind of a disappointment by the studio. And Ridley had plans for a third movie kind of in that storyline to make, but as of right now, it does not appear that film will be made. So let's just start here. It just needs to be addressed how bonkers it is that not only do these movies exist, but specifically just the way that they exist, which Owen and I were talking about the other day. Like, it's not necessarily baffling that more Alien movies have been made, but more so them being made in this way is what is so fascinating about them. And we wanted to cover these movies as a double feature because viewing this like duology as like the Alien prequel project, I think it lends itself to a much more interesting conversation. And broadly speaking, as to why we felt these movies were like postscript material, is that even though they were helmed by, Sir Ridley himself, they aren't nearly as revered as some other like prestige legacy sequels or prequels we've gotten, like Blade Runner 2049, Top Gun Maverick, or even like the Star Wars prequels at this point, right? And frankly, these movies like soared up like a postscript schedule when it was a couple weeks ago after a pod, Seb and Mateo and I, we stayed on a little bit. We were mapping out the next few movies to cover. And Owen, I don't know if you're aware of this, but when I saw that Covenant currently has a 2.9 average rating on Letterboxd, I screamed. I screamed. I was like, did I watch a different movie? Like Seb and Mateo haven't seen either of these films, but I was like, we're covering these as soon as this is our Ridley week. We have to talk about these movies. I can't even wrap my head around, not even a 6 out of 10 for folks. That is just, I'm sorry. It just needs to be talked about. And again, it's like Mateo stated on the first ever pod, people aren't dropping rewatches for these movies in 2023. And that just breaks my heart. And so Owen very recently watched Prometheus and Covenant for the first time, and he saw the light. he gets it, and I mean, just an instant lifelong connection when you meet a fellow Prometheus Covenant truther, frankly. So right now, I want to throw it to Owen because the Alien franchise is long tenured. It's a very venerable franchise. And can you just walk us through what was the state of Alien looking like leading up to the release of Prometheus in 2012 when Ridley finally returned to the franchise?
Well, let me tell you, Chris, it was not looking good. It was rough. I don't know. The Alien franchise is kind of strange because it's sort of it is a sci-fi franchise, but the trajectory it was on up until Prometheus was sort of like a B movie, like horror franchise trajectory, right? So we start out with this like incredible film, Alien, 1979, Ridley Scott, sort of hot onto the scene with a perfect movie. I mean, I think it's pretty widely regarded as one of the best horror science fiction films, like American horror science fiction films.
Even just films of all time. Yeah.
Right, yeah. It's up there. And then that's followed up with James Cameron's Aliens, which is sort of this hard pivot into this action blockbuster, almost 10 years, 1986. So it wasn't an immediate follow-up. But and then after that, I mean, people dislike Alien 3 or Alien Cubed, as the title has it, but
right.
I mean, that's David Fincher, and then we have Jean-Pierre Jeunet makes the fourth one. I mean, these are respected directors who went on to make other, very, very well-respected, highly lucrative films that kind of got not Cameron, of course, didn't get his start with Aliens, but he did sort of that was huge in building his reputation. And like filmmakers like David Fincher, I don't think we get some of his later films with the sort of like, I don't know, the style he developed without Alien 3. So the franchise did sort of serve as a starting point for a lot of these filmmakers. Even though the quality did start to go downhill a little bit after Aliens, at that point is when it starts to follow this sort of like horror sequel franchise trajectory, especially with the two Alien versus Predator movies. The first one directed by genre movie legend Paul W.S. Anderson, no relation to Paul Thomas Anderson, and AVP Requiem, which was really like rock bottom. I mean, this I tackled it in my rewatch recently, and it's hard to get through. I mean, we're hanging out in like America present day. Like, how did we get here? It was pretty clear death of the franchise. And so the fact that after that, I mean, I think AVP Requiem was like 2008 or something.
Yeah.
To the only thing that could have possibly saved this franchise is something that in like any other case with a franchise like this would be impossible, which is the original filmmaker coming back with like a totally new vision, totally new outlook for the franchise, like almost 40 years later, and making like not just one but two prequels that totally redefined what the franchise was, right? That'd be like, I don't know, like John Carpenter coming back like today and making a Halloween movie about like Michael Myers' parents or something. It doesn't happen like at all, right? So here we are, and we have these two films to talk about now, and having them has totally reshaped, like you were saying a little bit, like the lore that's associated with a lot of it was totally fan built from the little bits and pieces from those first four movies and AVP or whatever, until we get to these films, which are they're in some ways they are lore dumps, and I say that lovingly. I mean, they really do a lot of legwork with the prequels that is totally new and totally original, totally separate from like any sort of fan servicey stuff. But it also does, like, it connects flawlessly back into the original. He doesn't try to retcon everything with that. So it really is just kind of mind-boggling that these two projects exist.
Yeah, no, I mean, very, very well said. Yeah, like it I remember you said yesterday, it's like, yeah, like it seemed like AVP Requiem was just the nail in the coffin. Like that,
yeah,
like here lies the Alien franchise after that. But then you get Sir Ridley himself, maybe the only person that could have resuscitated like this franchise, right? Because even James Cameron was actually working with Ridley in like the early 2000s on trying to like potentially further like the Alien story and develop like another sequel. But then like the moment James Cameron found out about like the development of the first Alien vs Predator, he dipped. He was like, I'm out. Like he was like freak you guys like this. Like he was like this. In his words, it quote kills the validity of the franchise. Like he totally abandoned ship about that, and he's kind of valid. And then you have Ridley coming back, but the thing is that he was very adamant on not just like playing the hits with Prometheus. You know, he wasn't just like, okay, like let's just run it back, you know, and remind people why we liked Alien. He wanted to make sure that this was like its own thing, and that this film wasn't like, in his words, wasn't just going to end with like John Hurt walking into a room with a bunch of alien eggs. You know, like it wasn't going to it wasn't no shade to Rogue One. It wasn't gonna Rogue One and like end with Princess Leia like leading, you know, right into New Hope. He was like adamantly against that. Yeah,
I was gonna bring up Rogue One at one point as a sort of touchstone for comparison, because I know people love that movie. I'm not gonna get into that, but they definitely these prequels definitely take a much different approach in that even though like the pieces do connect between these and the original. It's not like we have to fill in a timeline. It's sort of
because it takes place a long time before then, and it was when Damon Lindelof came aboard on the script. Is that when the story became, like, in their words, it became more of a story that ran like parallel to Alien rather than being like a direct bridge that set it up, you know. And there are certainly strands of DNA from the first Alien film, like, you know, in Prometheus, it kind of evolves into its own thing. And what it evolves into is just like on its own right, in its own merit, just like an utterly fascinating blockbuster. A $130 million budget movie, like exploring ideas like this and being as like unashamedly like philosophical as this film is, like pretty remarkable. Like it's a very, very unique film. Like there are some like huge ideas that Prometheus tries to explore, because the film, I mean, to start with, it draws a lot from John Milton's Paradise Lost, which is, you know, like, I mean, the original title of the film was Paradise, you know, because Paradise Lost is like the epic poem of like the story of like Adam and Eve and like their temptations from Satan, like the entering of sin into the world and like the resulting banishment from the Garden of Eden. And so like Prometheus is about like our relationship with like our creators and the act of seeking answers from and like defying them, and like, and it literally, like, it's trying to explore whether or not, like, again, in Ridley's words, if science and God like can coexist. The concept for Prometheus was also inspired by the book Chariots of the Gods, which is about like the theory of like ancient astronauts, which hypothesizes that life on Earth was created by aliens. And Ridley said, quote, NASA and the Vatican agree that it is almost mathematically impossible that we can be where we are today without there being a little help along the way. And that's what we're looking at in this film.
Ridley was a little loco for
that.
That's whoa.
Like it's like he wasn't just like, all right, let's just, you know, dust off Alien. Let's see what juice it's got left in the tank. Like he's exploring the largest themes known to man, like in this film, which I think is so fascinating, right? And so not only was Prometheus, again, like this like hugely awaited follow-up and reboot to the Alien franchise, it's just a bonkers blockbuster, you know? Like, and so and so I know, you know, before we get into Covenant, Owen, what was, you know, do you have like an idea of what like the response, at least from like even like a fan perspective, or just like a general audience perspective of what that was to Prometheus?
So I mean, there are like two kind of camps, I think, in terms of like the Prometheus reactions, right? There's people who are like, we're sort of casual fans of the originals and we're interested in what, you know, like they were interested in what Ridley's doing, and they're willing to kind of let him assign his vision onto everything and go along with it, right? Playing along.
Yeah.
And then there's the like Simpsons comic book guy, like breaking down like the diehard fans, right? Which, you know, power to them. But like the real diehards, I think, were sort of upset by these films because it is taking like, you know, 35 plus years of the franchise And because they're, by nature prequels, they are going to recontextualize everything that comes after. That's just, that's what he was attempting to do here, especially with some of the things that I don't think particularly like matter to Ridley Scott, like the biology of the alien creatures, right? Like I don't think he's mapping this out, right? But the people who do very much care about this, I guess, felt insulted by the fact that everything they thought they knew about the Alien franchise has been totally like recontextualized. But
Right. But because I know is like the only two like unresolved things that they were focused on tackling in Prometheus was just like, what are the origins of the alien, and then who was the space jockey? Like, who was that dude in that ship in that first Alien film?
I do want to say something. So this movie also, and so I haven't seen the Prometheus, but there is something that I do want to bring up, which is something that I do have a very clear memory of. This was like one of the first movies to get hit with like kind of the like CinemaSins school of critique.
Oh,
like one of the most like successful CinemaSins video is
Prometheus?
Is Prometheus.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's really fascinating. Wait.
And so like a lot of people, like a lot of my memory at the time of like kind of the negative reception of Prometheus was coming from people who were like, yeah, but like there's like so many unresolved plot holes and like things that are like
I did read that.
Don't make sense. A lot of people were kind of like frustrated by how the story kind of takes shape and were like confused by it. So I wonder how much of that criticism I'm gonna feel like watching it, especially given how I think we've kind of like, I think as a movie watching culture have kind of, started caring less, I think, about that sort of criteria.
Yeah,
I hope so. Yeah,
just like the worst
like
movie watching.
Because like I think watching Prometheus it'll be interesting because I don't think I knew Prometheus was even tied to the Alien franchise until like Alien Covenant came out. Like for the longest time, I thought it was just like a different movie that people didn't like because it was confusing.
No, Mateo, you'll know how validating that is to hear, because like in terms of my first experience with that film, I didn't know. It was an embarrassingly long time for me until I realized that Prometheus was a part of the Alien franchise. I was wholly unaware. I think like you, maybe until Covenant came out. I do remember reading that in my research for this film, is that this film Prometheus asks a lot of questions. It explores a lot of questions, right? And it intentionally leaves things unresolved or unanswered. Some of it was so they could explore it in a future sequel. But also, if you're, I don't know if this is where fans were getting upset, but like, I think it's good that this movie doesn't have the hubris to try and definitively answer like where we came from and like some of the philosophical questions it asked. Like that's not up to this movie. Again, and we've talked about this on other pods. It's like, it's the act of exploring these questions in this movie is what makes it compelling. And I remember what kind of got me to watch the movie in the first place was I'm cribbing this take from Chris Ryan on The Ringer. He was talking about Prometheus, and he was like, yeah, like there are some logic things that like don't make sense. Like you'll be watching, you'll be like, I don't know how this person got on this ship. I'm not really sure how they got here. But he was like, but I don't really care about that because it's one of the most singular blockbusters of this decade, and in so many other ways rips. And so I was like, okay, that's a fun way to view it.
I was just going to say that and we've kind of briefly had some of these discussions on the pod before where I've maybe sometimes internalized some movie logic as a bad thing or as like a mark against a film. Whereas like y'all will maybe be like, that didn't bother me, those aren't things that I'm concerned with. And that does come down to like an individual's viewing experience or their relationship with the movie or, expectations in a small way. Kind of why, Last Jedi keeps getting brought up. But that is interesting to me because I kind of fall into both camps sometimes. It really does depend on like what kind of movie I'm watching and how much maybe I'm invested with said franchise. We'll get into it. I literally just watched Alien for the first time last night. So
yeah, right. He's hot off the presses with Alien. Yeah. Because I know personally, I definitely try to see like the forest for the trees, and I try not to get too hung up on like little like logic bumps. Yeah, again, it's the CinemaSins brain that can cause people to get like way too hung up on like very pedantic minutia or minutia in a very pedantic way. That's just like that's just like not the point of the movie, because I feel like it's more, important to like, just again, of just like, what is this author, what is this director or writer like trying to say right now? What is he trying to make me feel? And yeah, but we could have a whole podcast just like breaking down that idea. I
was gonna say I'm kind of telling on myself here. I did watch The Marvels recently, and that film has a lot of space jargon in it. That the film, like you said, does not really communicate very well. And so there is a difference between that kind of filmmaking that, where you can feel like it's a bit lackluster when it comes to, you're trying to engage with it, but you want the movie to meet you halfway a lot of the time.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm going to take, a bit of this, a leap here and imagine that Prometheus probably is a better film than the Marvels.
A little more thought out. I think it was a little less chopped up in post than Marvels. Yeah. And I will, and just putting a bow on it, I know we're spending a little bit of time on this. As long as the emotional and thematic logic, we'll say, as long as those are cogent and coherent, and like I'm tracking on that sense, it's like little plot beats. It's for me, it's just like sometimes it's just like it's a movie, It's like like little things like that. I was like, as long as I'm with the characters, then I'm good.
Yeah, the movie can lose you maybe like on a logical level sometimes, but also those can also just be moments that you just go back home and you say, I wonder how that works.
Yeah.
And that's valuable in itself too.
Wow. Yeah. A much more earnest curiosity as opposed to just like ding, cinema sin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
The fridge, the fridge moment in Hitchcock like refrigerator logic,
Exactly. Again, it was a Quentin Tarantino quote when he said like, it's okay if you feel confused as long as you feel like you're in good hands in a film. And that's the most important thing that matters. It's like, it's okay if the audience isn't getting everything as long as they feel like they're on like the right journey from the director. How it makes you feel, it is the most important part. And that being said, so Prometheus comes out, and then 5 years later we get Alien Covenant, and which was originally titled Alien Paradise Lost. Like they were like not afraid to show how much they were drawing from that story, right? And this one, it was, they were attempting to, they wanted it to be more of a balanced fusion between the horror of the original Alien movie and while also maintaining the philosophical elements of Prometheus. And the word they used in development was like they want to make something like truly like frightening, so something that really gets to you. This came out a week after Avengers: Infinity War. It was Jover before it began, like for this movie. But again, 2.9 on Letterboxd, which still, like I said, after watching these two films, especially Alien Covenant, and seeing how like middling and just like 3 out of 5 city it was for this film, I was like, I was like, did they release a different film in theaters? Like, am I watching did people watch this with their eyes shut? Like, what am I possibly missing here? Because it's, again, with Ridley, like the craft is always so there, and it just like, I simply put, it ripped. And one of my biggest takeaways too, if we're talking broadly, just like with these movies, is that freaking, I'll just, Michael Fassbender's work across these two movies is my favorite thing he's ever done. Like
yeah, I 100% agree with that take.
I mean, turn me up. Like this is,
hyped.
I know, like that. Again, even if our opinions are all over the place in the post watch, I think he will be if we agree on anything, it will be Michael Fassbender in these two films. He is magnetic, and you watch him, and it's just like, why is he not the biggest actor alive? Like and again, we're on a Fassbender renaissance right now with the killer in the Taika Waititi film coming out. But
I know how much Chris loves Steve Jobs too, so that statement meant a lot.
I'm a big Steve Jobs, coming soon at some point to the Postscript, Steve Jobs 2015, not the Ashton Kutcher one, the Michael Fassbender. I always have to make that distinction, but he's amazing in these films, and I am so excited for you two to experience these films for the first time. I know this conversation's kind of been all over the place with these two movies, kind of the nature of the double feature of it all. But that being said, Seb, Mateo, what have been your respective just like experiences with these movies so far? Like, have you even like heard anything about these movies? Like, have you guys even experienced any Alien Covenant takes? Because again, not many people turned out for it.
So yeah, like I said before, my main memory of Prometheus was just because I was on that side of the internet. Like, I just remember all of those like pretty critical takes. So I think for a
Mhm.
pretty long time, until I like met people who like talk about it and really like it, like you, Chris.
Yeah.
I thought like I thought most people just thought this movie was like these movies were like bad.
Right.
I don't know. It's interesting because I also had not seen Alien, like Ridley Scott's Alien until pretty recently.
Mhm.
And that movie fascinated me because there are little snippets of like a much wider, like kind of like primal sort of mystery there. Like when they reach like in the beginning of the movie, they find this giant like nest with all of the xenomorph eggs, like that those like visuals are very striking. And it's like, I mean, like I think I wrote this in my original review. Like it looks like it's something that comes from like the pit of hell. Like it's like
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
got like that like Gustave Doré like engraving type of vibe to it. And so Ridley, who I think better than maybe anybody else with the franchise has like worked with that imagery, like seeing him come back and make two more movies is exciting for me to check them out. But
Mhm.
I mean, apart from that, like I know of one scene in the movie, and I studied a little bit of linguistics. I know there's like one scene in Prometheus where like there's like a robot or somebody that like talks in like reconstructed like Proto-Indo-European, which is like
Uh-huh.
kind of exciting for me, like in an academic sense.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
apart from that, I almost like I'm coming in, especially with Covenant, because I heard a little more about Prometheus. Prometheus was a bigger phenomenon when it came out.
Yes, yeah.
But
And it
like,
was also like in secrecy. Like they were like it was a big deal. They're trying to keep it under wraps. And like I saw one thing was like Ridley Scott convinced Fox to invest like millions of dollars to hire like scientists and conceptual artists to develop a vision of late 21st century like Earth and all. Like this movie was a big deal.
but like, yeah, I know with that for Prometheus, I have basically nothing on Covenant.
Yeah.
Like Covenant is just nothing. So
Buried
so
film.
yeah, watching this movie like for real and like actually like laying eyes on them, like I think is going to be a pretty
Mhm.
interesting experience. I don't know if I'm going to like them or not, but
Oh well.
but I have some I don't know. I have some I'm pretty excited.
This is where I was at going to them my first time was just like again like these aren't some like gobblers taking on the Alien franchise like it's Ridley who just like generally speaking is like one of our great masters of the craft. I know he was pushing wanted to push them into new directions, but he's in his bag, like it's one of our greatest living directors like doing the thing that got him here in the first place. So I was just like so I definitely wanted to view it with that lens and being like okay like I know I'm in good hands. But yeah, I mean, Seb, what about you?
Yeah. So my experience with this franchise is not even 24 hours old yet. So
Right.
I am very new, very fresh. I do know like the iconography, like the imagery of the Alien franchise, especially that first one. Like I watched Spaceballs like countless times. I know where the thing
Right.
beating out of the guy's chest where that came from.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But it was really cool to finally just watch the movie itself and experience it. Especially I was so glad I wasn't taking notes because it's such an atmospheric film, and I was
Oh
just like
yeah.
getting to live in the space for a bit.
Immersion.
Just like really taking the time to do long shots and just exist in the space and the sets that they built was made me excited for what Ridley's gonna be doing with 40 years later technology.
Yeah,
so
seriously, yeah.
so yeah, that I mean, and what's interesting about this duology here, it's not like Ridley fell off at Prometheus. Like I love The Martian that came out in 2015 between these films, so it's
Right.
like I know it's not like he just was a bad all of a sudden.
Not like he's been slumping the past 15 years or something. Yeah. Where my last
Right.
dual heads at. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm really really excited about jumping into this sci-fi. It's hard for that to get stale for me. So especially seeing the enthusiasm from you and Owen, like it's I'm not gonna be going in with like low expectations. I expect this thing to really at least take big swings, if nothing else.
Absolutely.
Which is
Yeah.
really all I can ask. Especially for sci-fi films. because I've seen a lot of them just kind of tread like stuff that's already been gone over. I don't know how it's all going to come together for me. I mean, the controversy comes from somewhere, and I'm very curious to see where that lies in these films. Because I know for you, Chris, you said you have no idea. Like you watch these films and you're just like, they saw a different film. They were in a different universe. You know?
I got a different cut or something. Yeah, I swear.
Yeah.
I just wanted to echo what you're saying. It's like, I think having not one but two films in the 2010s, in the age of these like comic book movies and like the type of just like so many safe blockbusters being made, having two movies like this that just at the very minimum go for it, you know, and are just like either thematically and or in a filmmaking sense. It's just like has to, again, not in a completion grade way, but like it, you know, ought to be appreciated.
I always commend them for doing stuff like that because you know it's so easy to just do what's been done because it works.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna appreciate Ridley regardless for that.
So Owen, before we dive into this rewatch, just take us through. I mean, you can take us through what your those first viewing experiences were for you for these movies, but also just like through what lens should we view this movie to like experience it best, to appreciate it the most? Like, what would you say to someone watching these films for the first time to be like, okay, like this is what he's going for, and this is what I liked about it?
Maybe this is not the most fair like piece of advice to give, but I think a lot of the criticisms that followed the release of Prometheus, I think a lot of it is because that movie maybe wasn't totally finished. I think this double feature is really one cohesive piece, and I think you have to watch it like that. They flow into each other perfectly. Their aesthetics are very, very similar. They're very cohesive. These two films complete each other. And I think if you want to really appreciate what Ridley is going for here, you really have to sort of approach it like that. Because I mean, I was like 8 years old when Prometheus came out. I'm a little younger than you guys. But I did not see that film in theaters, and I didn't see it before we had Covenant there to sort of complete the puzzle. So maybe some of those criticisms were fair in 2013, right? Maybe it did leave things a little too open. I mean, I guess thinking about it now, if you watch Prometheus without knowing that it is an alien film, like there's no way to know. I mean, unless you know that like Weyland Yutani is the name of the corporation and Alien. Like, I mean,
that's a great point. Yeah.
They don't use the iconography from the original, right? Once it's paired with Covenant, and that the timeline starts to flow sort of more cohesively together, is when I think what Ridley is trying to accomplish here, which is sort of this epic like space chronology of like evolution and all of these high concepts that you can't flush out in one movie, but they are, I think, very thoroughly explored in the two films as one piece, right? So if you approach this as a true double feature in that they are kind of made to be watched together, I think you'll take a lot more from this. Also, I mean, we kind of touched on it earlier. Focusing too much on the logic is going to lead you to some dead ends. I think focus on what Ridley is giving you, which is, I mean, Seb, you were talking about the visuals and the atmosphere of the original. He absolutely 100% delivers that with these films. That is more than anything. These films are vehicles for some of the most stunning landscape photography I've ever seen. Wow. I mean, it is just these films are beautiful, and so they can really be appreciated on that level too. Yeah, I don't want to hype it up too much because I don't want to see some 3-star letdowns, but we'll see how this goes. I'm excited for you guys to see these. I can't wait to watch them again.
No, like specifically, I want to ask, like, should we watch this back to back, like same night?
I don't think you have to watch it same night. I mean, I watched it. I gave it like 24 hours. But if you're into it, you got some snacks, you got your big old 2-liter and 6 hours of free time, knock it out. I would definitely advise that if you can, for sure.
Is it like a 6-hour horror film? Like I was just so
Um,
curious.
the tone. Okay, another reason I say they work well together is because Prometheus. I don't want to get too much in. I'm not gonna, do any spoilers or anything. But we start at the beginning of Prometheus. Whoa, and it's kind of like it's just a basic science fiction film, basically, and it builds across the two movies until it reaches this sort of this perfect little blend of like horror and sci-fi, which the original
Well said.
captured so flawlessly. So yeah, if you can handle the double feature back to back, knock it out. Definitely.
No, that's really well said. Because it's like a tonal progression in evolution too
Yeah,
across
it
these
is.
two movies. Yeah, no, I mean, great shouts on all fronts. Really love all that. Super well said. And yeah, there is one scene in Prometheus that's it's a body horror sequence, we'll say, and
Yeah.
that's, I mean, talk about like a never seen that before, type of thing. And that's where I'm now remembering, Mateo, the whole like. I think it's so fascinating how Prometheus almost like kicked off this like age of cinema since. That's so fascinating because we talked about that on other podcasts, and that's just like what a cursed era. But yeah, it's like, and that's why I start like my boiling my own blood when I'm thinking about someone like when I see someone like get hung up on like the logic of like, or like some like little plot logic, or just like how someone got onto a ship that fast. And it's like, bro, like look up from your phone, like look at these images, like look at these, like do you see this? Like and think about these like themes like Ridley's like exploring here, like you're being shown something you've never seen before, and you're like, wait a second, I thought he was just there. It's like, bro, it's like, like come on, like again. And for what it's worth, on my first two watches, I like. It's not like I felt myself being an apologist or giving the benefit of the doubt. Like that's why I was a little surprised when I was like, wait, like people like were there glaring things about these movies? Like I didn't feel myself like patching up plot holes myself while watching. Like it isn't a like like squint and it bangs type of thing. I didn't experience that, but it's still worth addressing. But yeah, man, I'm gassed for these rewatches.
I'm ready.
My guess coming out of Alien of like what the prequels could explore was going to be like Mother and like the AI, because I was just like, there's not, and this is just me throwing theories out there because I don't know anything about these movies. Well,
Right.
it's only because like the first Alien movie is not like a lore heavy film. It's very straightforward.
Simple narrative.
Yeah, which is why I'm like, I wonder what they're going to expand on, because I'm not completely lost.
Yeah, you didn't finish Alien, and you're like, like how did like what like what did Darth Vader used to be like? Like what?
Yeah,
was it
exactly.
Like, you weren't thinking about questions like that, and that was actually. And one last thing, that was a really fascinating thing I read of when of like one of the original writers of Prometheus, when he was talking about like when he was like tasked with like writing this prequel, and he was like, okay, well like the thing is that all these like all the mysteries in the first Alien are like all have alien players, it's like all things that like not pertaining to Earth and humans. So he was like, how do you make anyone care about events between creatures like this? And he goes, and his solution was to link the alien mysteries to the past and future of humanity. Quote, if that story is somehow ours and deeply enmeshed with the human story, the story changes meaning within our life, things of such significance that we think of our own lives differently. There was a lot of thought put into like what kind of story can we tell as a prequel? Like not just how can we set Alien up, it's like how can we use this as a foundation to tell something else, which is I think is really fascinating. So that being said, we will see you all on the other side 2 movies later. And we're back. Us four have all been replaced by our AI replicants. And we actually all look like Michael Fassbender too, which is, I mean, that's a dub. I'm down with that. Fellas, I mean, that was just a thrill. And I know we are all bursting at the seams with thoughts about these movies. So let's just start. I want to hear everyone's just like broad general thoughts just about the Alien prequel project, about like this duology, what our takeaways were from this like double feature, right? And so Seb Mateo, I want to start with you because you guys had not seen either of these before, and everyone is dying to hear what what you two thought. So
I think a lot of the times, we go into these watches, and I think, a good amount of the time, I tend to be maybe one of the more bearish Postscript members about some of the movies we watch, and especially kind of like, maybe I'm generally pretty skeptical of like movies that try to go for like more cerebral stuff and don't really hit the mark, but like it's just good to see a movie like really kind of nail it,
let's go.
And I think these two movies, at least like in terms of like their ambition thematically and what they want to talk about, there was never a point where I was disappointed or I felt like the material was letting me down, and that's really high praise for like franchise filmmaking like this. Any like gripes that I might have with these movies like are going to stem from like their structure and like maybe the story, but really like if you're watching these movies and you're like I just want another Alien movie, you're kind of missing the point. Especially I think Alien Covenant ties it all together in a way that is just like shockingly good.
You don't know how much that fills my heart, Mateo. I wish everybody on Earth could feel the gratification I felt seeing Seb's and Mateo's reviews come in on Covenant. That is just, I mean, 2023 is just a success for Chris Hall now. So I mean, Seb, what about you? How did it really treat you?
So it's interesting because I was coming hot off the heels of the original, my first watch of the original. So it's like all of this was really fresh to me, and it wasn't like I didn't have any nostalgia baggage. I was just kind of enjoying the ride that Ridley was trying to give me, and I knew going into Prometheus with the discussion we had that like, oh, you can basically watch Prometheus and almost not even know it was an Alien prequel. Like it's just like its own contained movie, maybe until the end of Prometheus, where it's like it's pretty explicit. It's an Alien prequel, but overall, the movie though, and I did watch them back to back, was very. I'm glad I did that. It was very satisfying. There's a time jump between the two of them, but they do work in tandem a lot better than I expected. And I mean, I kind of came in with a very similar question that Chris was saying at the beginning. Like, I don't understand the hate. I don't get it. Like, the movie swings big for sure, but you can't tell me like the execution wasn't worthy of the ambition. You know, like it's just that Ridley is not trying to hurt anyone with what he's saying here. He's not trying to insult anyone either. I think he has really interesting questions and really interesting ideas that he wants to, explore with these films. And we shouldn't languish him for that. Like, that's just, let him cook. It's the best way that I can say this. Like, just,
this is hearing these words is clearing my skin right now. Like I'm actually, you can't see it. I'm not even sitting on a chair right now. I'm levitating. Like just hearing.
We're giving Chris a movie moisturizer.
Oh yeah. That'd be a crazy segment.
Let's go.
Okay. That moving on from that. And so Owen. So again, I know Owen and I, we weren't really, our rewatches weren't more so to like, we weren't really expecting our opinions to like drastically change that much, but I am wondering what your I'm just curious to hear what your thoughts were.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I I did my watch slash rewatch pretty recently, like a few months ago, and that was my first watch, like total sit through watch of both Prometheus and Covenant. And I would describe my relationship with the films at that time as like the first date, you know, like you're head over heels, you know, you're like you're love struck. And now that relationship has had some time and has really matured, you know, I'm in love, you know, I'm ready to pop the question. Okay. These movies, they're everything. They're so perfect in their execution, in what they're trying to say, but also developing, like I said last time, during the pre-watch, a little bit of a, like, it's this clear tonal progression over 4 hours separated by 4 years, but it still works flawlessly. They're these very cohesive pieces that know exactly what they're trying to do, and they execute that to the best possible extent that they could. So I think we should be really thankful for what we have here.
I love that.
And that's like showing off your new love to your friends, and that you get their approval as well. So
Yeah.
it's like,
Owen and Alien Covenant have recently actually bought a house. They're moving in together. They're like they're moving pretty fast.
We're expecting a little alien baby.
Let's go.
That's great.
The Owen morph.
It's so personally, yeah. So I hit the double feature last night, and yeah, if I was president, I would make this double feature mandatory viewing for everybody the age of 17. Like this is it's just essential. And these are some of the most fascinating, bleak, it's often mean blockbusters. Like of the past 15, 20 years, there's some mean stuff in this movie. Well, while still, like what Seb was saying, still like respectful of a lot of like beliefs and philosophies and stuff. Like with all this exploring, it's like, okay. And to echo something Owen said in the pregame, it really can't be emphasized enough how Prometheus really does benefit like being followed up by Covenant, and is made like retroactively made like a lot more satisfactory. Not that it's like cheeks without Covenant, not saying that at all, but like they really they complement each other so much. And also, like, I think the only knock I might have against Covenant is how like essential it is to see Prometheus before, but like I'm not going to punch that movie for being a sequel. That would just be extremely silly. And again, if that's my only bump, it's like, and I'm with Owen, it's like that rewatching these two films only deepened and solidified a lot of my feelings about these films and my passion for them. And again, sometimes it can be a dangerous banger of just like, oh, like first date went well, but it's like, you know, once are the rose colored lenses going to come off? But it's like, no, these things, like, as simply put as possible, they just rip, man. These movies just rip and are so remarkable. But
could you imagine if Chris's Cub card got revoked after
it would expired? Oh my. I honestly, like, I would need you guys to check in on me. Like, that's like, I'm going through something if I start heel turning on Alien Covenant or Prometheus. Holy smokes. Okay, so that being said, just to, you know, try to keep this conversation clean as the nature of like a double feature conversation, we'll just start with Prometheus and kind of work our way through that one, and then kind of get into Covenant. We can, you know, these conversations can bleed into one another because, again, it is a double feature. They are very much so in conversation with one another. But as for Prometheus specifically, what were you guys feeling about this? Just general thoughts and kind of your biggest takeaways from Prometheus.
Okay, so, you know, Prometheus, I think, is the one that Prometheus, I think, is maybe like the more interesting movie to me. And that's not to say that it's better, because I think Alien Covenant is better. But
dude, same thing.
But it is
yes.
It is an interesting movie to me because I think it is cool that it doesn't have the word alien in the title. And, you know, that's not to say that it's not extremely like referential to the Alien franchise. And like, obviously, like,
there's a lot more references in there than I thought.
Yeah, you know, and even though there are no technically xenomorphs that show up, you have like the predecessors. And so that the movie kind of like, it's interesting to me because I think the movie opens, the movie has a very interesting opening scene, which is, you have one of the engineers,
STEM kid,
these you know, white-skinned cousins of the Dark Elves from Thor 2.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah,
And
waterfall, yeah.
and he just like drinks this liquid and then instantly dies. Like you have to think you have to assume it's like some kind of like suicide or something.
The forbidden chug jug, yeah.
Yeah. And like, man, the movie just kind of like, I mean, what a perfect way to set the tone. Like,
yeah, to open your movie with the creation of humanity that it's implying, because it's like his body becomes like, you see the meiosis in the cells dividing, which is like, Mateo Core, as we know, seeing like cells divide on screen and stuff.
Yeah, like it's just so it's a movie that's like so much about like self-destruction,
kind of similar to Annihilation in a little way.
Yeah, and like and this journey that they come on, I think like the movie kind of thinks of it, there's like some hubris to it, like we're gonna find out the origins of humanity.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's kind of a cool, I like it because I think the most interesting concept of the movie is that essentially Ridley Scott like heard about like Chariots of Fire, which is like this like basically like pseudo scientific, pseudo historical theory that like about like ancient aliens, and was like, yeah, but what if the aliens were actually like really evil? Like, what if they were terrible? And what if they wanted to like wipe out humanity? And I mean, it's just such a great, like, it's such a great premise. And I think that's going to be what I take away from it the most. Like,
I was going to say, while we're on that opening scene, I mean, if you really think about what we're seeing, like in the first like 2 minutes of this movie, or not even 2 minutes, it's like a minute little scene, right? At the very start, it immediately establishes the themes of both movies, which is this idea of creation by any means necessary, including this like self-destruction, right? Wow. This engineer he's literally drinking poison in order to recombine his DNA. And we see this similar obsession that David takes on, not to get too far into Covenant, but I mean that theme of creating something and sort of messing around with nature and with life by any means necessary. Like Scott has that established within like 30 seconds of this first movie.
And that ties into how we've explored our relationship with artificial intelligence, how it will eventually destroy us. We'll create something that'll become beyond us, that will, want to destroy us because we're lesser.
Exactly.
And that's just the relationship of both movies, in my opinion, that I just absolutely loved, like creator and the thing that's created. And like, why does the creator hate the thing they created? Like what she has a line in Prometheus of like at the end where like, why do you hate us? And that rung so true to me throughout both films of like, you created us, why would you hate us?
No, totally. Yeah. And just like the frustration and like how upsetting it is to the characters that they just don't get those answers. Like they just but they feel entitled to these answers, but they don't get them. Yeah, Prometheus, this is a weird movie. Like it's a weird blockbuster, but it's endlessly fascinating, And like I think as for as huge as like the themes are, and for as much like lore and setup like a movie like this and its intended like sequel like requires, like I said something similar about Annihilation as well. Like it kind of moves through any plot or like exposition stuff like pretty effortlessly. And again, this was my first rewatch of Prometheus, and it was like more rewatchable than maybe than I anticipated. Like it's like it moves. It's a pretty like it feels like a pretty tight 2 hours, even if it's like even if you think it's like a little unwieldy or messy in places. It's just like at the very least, like not only did it keep my attention the entire time, like it keeps me thinking too for the entire runtime. Like all the best sci-fi does. Like it's just like it's trying to like again to the project to make you think about things that you wouldn't have otherwise.
The consistency between both movies just impresses me a lot. Like we were saying, the theme at the start there, like he knows immediately what he's going for and he runs with it. And like you're saying, Chris, I was kind of expecting to be like a little bit worn out by some of the plot stuff.
Yeah,
but it's very rewatchable. Like it doesn't. This movie feels maybe in retrospect like a lot of exposition, but it's so integrated into the action and into the sort of mystery of what's happening on screen that it's so entertaining to watch. It doesn't feel like exposition dump, you know?
Yeah. Dense but not heavy, you know?
Right.
That's
Whoa. Okay.
Chris is pulling out some
Yeah.
Lindelof lines right now.
Yeah.
It was like God does not build in straight lines. I remember that coming out. And I was like,
No, Seb sent the like pen on fire guy writing gif, like talking about like Lindelof, specifically with Fassbender. Like, yeah, no, he's definitely cooking in this one for sure.
I mean, there's some fun Prometheus, like, you know, and I mentioned this as a knock to the movie. This movie is there are 17 people on this crew, but it's a big cast.
Yes,
but like, you know what? Occasionally, I'm having fun with like these like admittedly a bit shallow characters having their little like one-liners.
Yeah, right.
Like you have the inimitable Sean Harris with like one of the coolest voices in Hollywood.
Oh.
If there's anything in there, my pups will find them. And then he does a little howl.
Oh, dude, that's
when they're scanning
that stuff.
When
they're
adding
scanning
color. Yeah,
you know, whatever that building is, whatever that complex is that they find.
Yeah, the rec center. Yeah,
the Rex.
I mean, that's just like yeah, this movie is really, it really kind of moves. I think part of that is helped by the fact that the script takes them to one place and then they kind of they just kind of jump back and forth between, and it's a little like repetitive, but it works where they go to the ship, they go to this complex, they go back to the ship, they just kind of keep jumping back and forth.
Yeah,
but like
I noticed
that sort of economy, I think, really helps the movie, like pacing wise. And
I agree.
You know, if it had been a little more like kind of globe hopping, it probably would have been a lot more expensive to make and a lot more unwieldy on the story level.
And it allows you to make your one location like very realized, you know, and just like and make it very rich. Yeah.
There is not I mean, I'm sure there actually are green screens in this movie. There is not a single bad green screen in this movie.
No,
and I mean,
dude, visually,
totally correct.
Stunning. Yeah.
They built some incredible looking sets.
Like, I thought he was going to go. They built a planet. I thought he was about to
say. I mean, but they might as well have. They might as well have built a planet.
Bro.
It looks amazing.
You're man-made.
Yeah. No, like thank you for bringing that up, because Ridley is like, I mean, he is a master of blending real environments with like in sets with VFX, and his like the way he can take us to a completely new world, but without placing us in some like fully digital environment, you know, or have it feel like a soundstage in Atlanta. Unbelievable. It's incredible. And yeah, like, and I think you highlighted this to Owen in the pregame, but like, I mean, the production design and just those landscape shots. Like, again, the first 2 minutes of the movie, the credits is just like Planet Earth in the best way possible. Like, I'm watching Planet Prometheus, and like, and it's just it's breathtaking. Like, and
it's beautiful.
The colors, again, the uncut gems. Why has it got so many colors in it? Award like goes to this film. It's like somebody's just standing in front of a bathroom mirror, and it's like, why is this breathtaking? You know, but like, it's an amazing looking film. Yeah, I don't know if you guys wanted to add on to that in any way, but
I mean, no. If you look at some of like how Ridley even composed these, I mean, they literally like cross the globe for these shots. Wow. Like there's footage of like canyons in Jordan that is layered with footage of like mountains in like Iceland or something in the background. Nice. Like he's building a new world out of our world, and it's totally fresh. You can, it's so tangible. Like you have this feeling, like you experience the wonder along with this crew, and then like seeing the huge structure down in the valley there, it's breathtaking.
The scale is done really well. They're not afraid to be like have these wide shots of people walking towards these giant set pieces, and it all feels tangible. Like you said, the lighting is just immaculate.
If you want to look at this like in comparison or like in contrast to the original Alien, it really also the way he shoots landscapes here or like executes them, it really is telling of the tonal shift he's going for. because everything for the most part here, until some scenes later in the film, is happening in broad daylight, right? And it really does evoke this like, it's like this awe of like almost like they're to go into Covenant, maybe the gods as they entered into Valhalla, right? Like they have arrived at this place of creation, whereas the original Alien is more like it's obviously it's done with like matte paintings and stuff, but it's very dark. You can't see anything, and it's more about like descending into this hellish abyss, right? So that tonal shift is immediately palpable, even from the opening shot with that waterfall. It's just,
absolutely, yeah.
No, I mean, I want to talk about Noomi Rapace.
You read my mind. I was gonna say like, I want to talk about the cast. Weird cast. Great. Again, like again, you have Noomi Rapace leading a cast that also has Charlize Theron and Idris Elba, and like it's
stacked.
It's
like
stacked. Yeah.
If I'm doing the movie grid challenge, and I just like need like an obscure like just a movie that has every actor in it, I might just go to Prometheus. Like just crazy.
You have Patrick Wilson in a fuzzy dream sequence as Noomi Rapace as Dad.
I always forget he's
crazy.
You want to talk about quick cameos? We all know the one in Covenant.
Yeah.
Oh,
at the very beginning,
jump scare. That for all the horror in these two movies, that was the biggest jump scare. Is the cameo in Covenant.
But also like Benedict Wong, like I mean, if you're doing like if you're like drafting for movie fantasy, like early 2012, like somebody who took Prometheus, and you follow like the career of all these actors, it's like that's a high value
collecting dividends. Oh yeah, I have so many thoughts about this casting. It's like I know it has so many faces we like, but the way they're used, I'm just like I'm just so bewildered by some of it. Not in a bad way. I'm not saying this in an entirely bad way, but like you have Idris like with an accent that comes and goes every other sentence. And I'm like, it's just, and I'm like, I mean, I'm happy to see Idris, but like this role, I will say my only substantial gripe with this movie, like my only real like true bump on it is that I think Holloway, like Noomi Rapace's like partner in the film, I think he's a pretty major miscast. Like that is like negative charisma. Maybe you guys were
Logan Marshall Green of the OC.
This doesn't like eclipse like all that I love about this film, but I will say I could not stand that guy. I'm sorry. Like I could thankfully by about the midway point, don't have to deal with him any longer,
He's
know.
cooked.
But I feel like it's just like so many other people could have done that better, you know. Like I'm thinking like for instance like Chris Evans pretty much has a very similar role in Sunshine, and someone like him could like do that in his sleep, you know. There's anyone with like it's just when charisma rings hollow, the ick is crazy. Like it's you know.
That's Joseph Gordon-Levitt in there.
I would take some JGL, bro. Yeah.
Okay. Here's what I'll say. I'm gonna defend. I'm
here for
my boy
please.
Here. You know, he is. Yes. So I will say he is a little bit like hollow and uncharismatic.
Yeah.
But I there's something that I really like about that. There's something that I kind of enjoyed about that. Like just like a very like sort of like uneasy, like controlling type of personality.
Yeah.
That, I don't know.
Against the way he's written. Nothing against the way he's written.
Yeah, like, but I think that he kind of gets to that a little bit with his performance. Like, I don't know, and he does, you know, die, but like, which takes him out of the equation. But like, you know, after they find the, I keep wanting to say the Eternals. After they find the, after they find the engineers.
You're not wrong.
That's so funny. That's
after they find the engineers, like he goes back and he's like kind of like drinking a lot. Like he almost becomes Oscar Isaac's character from Ex Machina.
Ooh, that's like good casting for this role. Oscar Isaac.
Yeah. Oh, could you imagine?
Someone would have dropped a Fireburger. Yeah, I mean that's like
probably. Let's be honest.
I don't know. Like there's something about that interesting, like it, like kind of like mixture of menace and vulnerability, which I appreciated. I enjoyed.
But also,
that's valid.
I mean, I think we were supposed to feel something when he was turning and offered himself up to get flamed. And, can't say I was devastated. No, I should bring up these two movies have a bizarre amount of people getting cooked alive. I was gonna say, if I had a nickel for amount of
Grill Master Ridley, bro, is crazy.
No, dude, it's crazy. Like I'd have a lot of nickels, and
at least a couple. Yeah.
I
was gonna say, while we're talking about the cast,
like,
if we could just mention how absolutely crazy it is that instead of casting an 80-year-old man to play Peter Wayland,
words out of my mouth,
we have Guy Pearce in like Texas Chainsaw Massacre grandpa makeup.
That's exactly what I was about to say. I was saying that
Brad Pitt, Benjamin Button.
Yeah,
dude, that's what I'm saying, bro. Brad Pitt found dead. I bought the makeup. I'm not gonna lie.
It's very so interesting
funny.
casting. Apparently,
do you want to know something? So I didn't mean to interrupt. It was originally going to be Max von Sydow, or Max von Sydow.
Really?
Pronounce it. It was going to be Max von Sydow, but Pierce was cast specifically so they could fluctuate his age. And I do think this is an instance where we're watching Covenant, like I said, retroactively enhance Prometheus. Because at first it's like, why is Pierce in makeup right now? But then when you see him younger in Covenant, it's like, oh, you start to see the kind of vision and like the full picture of these movies more. And like I know that just helped me a lot. I'm just like, why didn't we just cast an old guy? You know, I'm like, honestly, what is this? Like
one of the things that casting Guy Pearce made me think, and like when I realized that was Guy Pearce, I was like, oh, so like the engineers are going to like DH him or something. That's what I thought was going to happen.
Oh yeah,
that was my expectation. I thought they were going to like give him immortality and like age him back or something.
So then we just have Guy Pearce. Yeah.
And then he just dies.
Yeah,
he just gets killed.
He gets one-shotted, bro. Yeah.
Well, kind of, right? I think he doesn't he say a line right before he dies, like
there's nothing.
Fassbender says something like "Have a great trip, sir." And I can't remember if he said something.
He says, "There's nothing."
There's nothing. That's what he said.
Wait, that's a
heavy line.
That's a bleak.
And Fassbender says, "I know."
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, I'm just gonna. Wow. I mean, that's gonna add a few minutes to my shower tonight.
I mean,
all right.
Now that I'm picturing Max von Sydow in that role, I mean, I wish. I really do. Guy Pearce is great, but can you imagine? Wow.
Yeah. He would have smoked that. But I will say, I do, without getting too ahead of ourselves, I do love that opening scene in Covenant with Pierce and Fassbender. So like that alone like it justifies it for me. But I do want to say one thing on Noomi Rapace is that, you know, she's good in the film. For the first hour, I was like, okay. I mean, she's fine. Interesting choice. But how the way she sells, just like from the moment she gets like impregnated, and the way she, I mean, just amazing horror acting in the surgery scene, which is like we gotta talk about this scene because that is a like, not to sound like a sicko, but like that's gotta be like this is why we play for me in this movie, because that scene is like visceral filmmaking on just like on like a transcendent level with those like sickening, dread-inducing POV shots. Yeah.
My notes had we're about to get a horror pregnancy scene, aren't we? And then like 5 minutes later, I'm like, well, that was one of the worst things I've ever seen.
It's like capital B body horror, bro. Like that wins the put your snack down award for the film. Like that is
it's hard. It's genuinely hard to watch. It really is.
Like I'm seizing in my seat watching that. It's unbelievable.
Ridley, I think, maybe more than most male directors, somebody who tries to put like kind of a feminist touch on all his movies. I mean, like very, very kind of like cruel, ironic twist that she has to program the medical robot to like do the surgery because it's programmed for men only. Like that is such a dark, like, it's such a dark wrinkle to just throw into the movie, but that's definitely like Ridley's signature on the movie.
Absolutely. And the best capper to all of it is Fassbender's zinger at the end where he goes, "I didn't think I had it in you. Sorry. Poor choice of words."
It's a great line. It's freaked, but it's a great line. But one last thing on like the cast and the characters. Actually, no, two last things. One, and you can speak on this however much you want to, but I remember Seb, you said in your like Letterboxd review how you were like, you bumped a little bit on how the characters just kind of felt like archetypes more than anything else, like not necessarily like maybe not like people. I will say, like, just to kind of like maybe devil's advocate it, I was thinking, I was like, because that was actually one of the things I appreciate a lot about Covenant. I was like, oh, they just feel like real people, like this crew. I really like that. We'll get more into that, but I will say, in retrospect, I'm like, I'm actually a little okay with the archetype you feel in Prometheus, because Prometheus feels a lot more like a parable, or like a
It's
story.
a fable. It's a fable. Yeah.
Fable. That's the word I'm looking for. Like, and so it's, you know, everyone kind of representing something like works more on that than it would have been like Covenant. But obviously, I totally see what you were getting at with that. I'm just like,
I think it was just maybe because the cast was so stacked. I was like, I wish
it's
they
so
utilized them better. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
No, yeah. And there is a little bit of again, these are tiny little things of like such a deep, again, 17 deep. I mean, if the Dallas Mavericks like freaking like on this spaceship, and like, and it also establishes that like a lot of them didn't really know each other. So like,
they crosstalk with each other and they argue constantly. It's a cool little detail. Yeah.
No, good shout. And what that leads me to put a bow on the kind of casting character talk, as again, weekly tradition on the show. If Tim Robinson from I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson were cast in this film, who would he play? I just want to say I am itching to share this one.
I did not think of it. I need to start thinking about it. Like,
I've got my answer ready.
I mean,
wait, Owen, what do you think? I want to see if it's the same as mine. Owen,
I want to see Tim Robinson in that white makeup, baby. He's an engineer.
Dude, if Tim Robinson's an engineer,
he's where we come from, you know.
Why do you hate us? It's just Tim Robinson. That's amazing.
It's Tim Robinson, and he like wakes up.
He has the driving crooner thing on his like tomb. Yeah.
Oh my
He's still
God.
breathing. He's like, I know you can't see it on the podcast.
We're trying to make it look fake.
We are puffing our cigar decal.
Okay, that might be better than what I had. But when I was watching, I was immediately like, oh, like you got to make him one of the goobers that got left in the cave. Like, but it was like Sean Harris and that other guy. But
yeah,
you specifically have to make him Sean Harris just for him to deliver that rock line, which sounds straight out of I Think You Should Leave when he goes, I'm just a geologist. I like rocks. I love rocks. I don't think you care about rocks. I was watching that scene. I was like, where did this come from? Like, what's happening right now? Like,
I love that. That might be my favorite. I was honestly thinking the same thing, Chris. Like, that would be such
like, was this line in the script? I was like, what's he on about? Like,
no, bro, he turned it up to 11, like out of nowhere. Like,
yeah, no,
I love rocks.
Fun little rant.
Yeah, again, adding a little bit of color to the movie, but like Tim Robinson would cook with that. Yeah,
I like that. Like Lindoff was like, I gotta get this guy out of this scene. He shouldn't be here. Let's get him angry about rocks.
How do we get stage right for Sean Harris right now? Yeah, but what's this? You've had all summer to figure out what your deal is. I guess it's rocks. Okay,
my goat.
And so, and another thing I want to talk about this movie is that I think it's worth talking about just the CinemaSins piece of it all, because we mentioned it in the pregame, and I unfortunately did some research into what the controversy was in this movie upon release, and it was deflating just seeing like where the fact that we got to that place as a society. And frankly, I almost don't even want to give this form of movie watching like the light of day, but I do think it's worth addressing. A lot of the arguments in this movie were centered in the way of thinking that you see in a lot of other horror movies of, well, if I were there, I wouldn't have done that. One of the worst ways to watch a movie, frankly. It's just missed me with that. And I wanted to bring this up just to share like one of the best pieces of wisdom for watching movies I feel like I've ever read, especially as like an antidote to Reddit brain. Just the simple fact of like, a character making a mistake or making a bad decision is not a plot hole. Like, if somebody acts way out of character and in a way that's like egregiously not in line with how they've been written, then yeah, there's a conversation there. But like, characters do not, like, people do not bat 1,000 in real life or anywhere. It's like, you know, and so, and I'm cribbing this a little bit from it was actually from a David Sims article about Prometheus that he wrote before Covenant came out, when he was encouraging people to like revisit the film. He was like, the movie is very clearly about like the folly of man and like how silly our like self-importance and grandiosity is. And like having these characters die in these ways, like, is very much so intentional. And as he put it, a feature rather than a bug, you know? which I think is a great way to put it. But you can also, it's not that difficult to explain away like the things people got mad at, because I know the two biggest ones, it was the two guys, the Tim Robinson bit, like the two guys who got murked in the cave alone and like Charlize's death. And it's just like, I mean, it was two goobers who had been up all night in a cave on a foreign planet. I'm sorry, they maybe they were too interested in that alien squirming around in like the liquid on the ground when it busts through the helmet. It's like, okay. And then for Charlize, they were like, when she got crushed by the ship, which so I saw a tweet the other day. It was like some tree fell on a guy, and someone goes Prometheus 2012, and I was like, that's kind of and so it was like she could have just run to the left or the right, which is what you did. And it's like, hey King, next time a spaceship is falling on top of you, let me know how it goes. Let me know how quick on your feet you are. Like, what you like, get out of here. That's just the lamest way to watch it.
I will say, as I was watching it, I'm like, okay, but she could have.
Okay, I mean,
it's because Naomi does, but it's also like, but it's not movie breaking. It's fine to think that.
It's fine. It's fine. It came in my head.
Yeah, no,
it came in my head, and I just chuckled a little bit, and I'm like, I'm just gonna keep watching this movie now.
It's only because she's running for so long.
Yeah.